So we're in the audiovisual vault. We keep the doors shut on either side to limit, we try to contain the relative humidity and the temperature. It should be a little cooler in here, and we don't want the temperature and humidity to fluctuate too much. So that's not something we actually talked about before, but we do 2 rounds of inspection every day, in the morning and the afternoon before we close. And we're looking at these high fluctuations, so we want to avoid any mold outbreaks. In the summer, actually, here at the archive, it can get very humid, and so we have dehumidifiers placed in various rooms. In the winter, we're very lucky we're able to inject humidity, and so facilities here at the university can help us control our environmental conditions, so that's great. Behind me you can see some of the reel-to-reel tapes that have been rehoused through a project that we did a number of years ago. So many of these reels would include oral histories that have been done, music. This was collecting that was done over the years by staff, or it was a donation to the archive. And there's some fantastic content here, very relevant to folklore. So you'll get various ethnic groups, cultures, traditions, foodways, all kinds of topics covered all over the island. So it's not just one community, it's really, there's a representation from all over the island. And the Beaton is sort of considered a regional archive, and we would have everything from the west side to Cape North, and then into sort of the more CBRM industrial area as well. In the 80s, there was an ethnocultural resources inventory done in 1988, and that looked at the different ethnic groups on the island, excluding some of the larger ones, sort of like Celtic and Gaelic, but I think there were over 23 represented, and so there were oral histories taken at the time, and you get a really nice snapshot of I guess immigration patterns and how diversity over the years has shaped the island. And the audiovisual vault is really where you'll find a lot of that information.
Can you show us what one of the reel-to-reels looks like?
Certainly.
Because I'm imagining probably a lot of people don't know what that is.
No. And we do have some reel-to-reel machines at the Center for Cape Breton Studies. And it's basically magnetic tape. And then they're digitized. Sometimes they've been copied already onto cassette, and then, but we go back to the original, whether that is the cassette or the reel, and we then create a digital file from that. There are different sizes, and the condition varies, although the audio-visual collection is probably one of the most threatened mediums in the archive, so it's always a high priority for us, and we're always trying to make sure that we're digitizing and creating preservation copies, rehousing, so the audio-visual materials are always high priority and on our minds. And it's actually one of the most accessed and requested areas, and Christy McNeil's doing a fantastic job of getting the materials organized, working with the digital files, and bringing order into what was a bit of chaos.
Most people, I think they think only about as far back as vinyls, but it goes back quite far.
Yeah, and actually that's a good question. I do not know what our oldest audiovisual item is. I think that would be motion picture film that we have, but I'm not sure about our sound recording, so I'd have to check with Christy on that.
Yeah. Because I think the oldest forms of sound recording, aside from memorization, would be the wax cylinders, right?
Yes, we don't have any cylinders. We don't have any wire recordings. So those earliest recordings that you might find at, say, a Folklife Center at the Smithsonian, we don't have those. But we do have the reels. We do have 78s, and we do have actually some of the earliest Cape Breton commercial recordings. And we're currently working on processing and making available the Rodeo Records collection, which includes the Celtic label. And so one of our other interns, Cyril McDonald, is working on that material. And then our other intern, Ben McNutt, is doing work with our textual documents, and I can show you some of those as well. So before I was talking about digitization and how lucky we are to have the extensive backups that we do. Early on, and not even early on, it was a few years ago, gold DVDs were considered a 100-year preservation strategy. But we are now comfortable with a full digital backup that we no longer burn to DVD. And that is something that we may be late to, but it's pretty much the standard now in archives, not to create we did create DVDs for listening, but now there's such good file transfer programs that makes it easier for us to share files when we're able to.
Who even knows what we'll be using 100 years from now?
That's right. We try to, I guess, forecast that. And that's part of what the researchers do, are basically those who are doing archival research. But it'll be interesting to see what will happen. So we do have some rules and regulations when you come into the archive. As much as I love, that's a difference between libraries and archives. You can bring your tea and coffee, and have your beverage with you at the library, but we don't allow drinks or food in the archive. We're highly aware of potential for pest infestation. We have integrated pest management, and we check daily to see that there's no evidence of pests. And also, if you spill your drink on something that is unique, it's very difficult or impossible to replace it or to fix it. So no food and drink. Gloves, which are often associated with all heritage work, whether it's museums or archives. And I used to work as a conservator, so we would wear gloves when we were treating objects. It's extremely important to wear them when handling photographs, because the oils on your fingertips can actually transfer into the emulsion and etch the photograph, marring it, forever. Handling metal objects, same idea. It's very important to wear gloves. Textual documents, it depends. Sometimes we're as acidic as what we're holding. So, as long as your hands are clean, you don't necessarily need to wear gloves. But it's really at the discretion of usually our front desk worker who's doing reference. And sometimes if it's early paper, that paper is not acidic. So you might not want to transfer anything from your hands to that early paper. But later newsprint and later 20th century paper, basically you and the paper are of the same pH, so the gloves aren't as necessary, as long as you have very clean hands. I'd recommend taking off jewelry sometimes because it can snag. So you'll see here we have, I mentioned one of our interns, Ben McNutt, is actually doing some arrangement and description. So he's working with photographs of World War II plane crash investigations. And so at the time, you can see these were secret.
Oh, wow.
Time has passed, and before we make them available, though we will look into if there are any considerations around public access. But they're very interesting, and so Ben has tried to research where the locations are. Are they in Canada? Are they in our area in Nova Scotia? And in some cases, he has been able to identify. And all of this will go towards creating a finding aid for the collection. So they've been foldered and rehoused, and the arrangement description is done, and he has done some scanning, so some digitization. And so the next step will be to, create a finding aid and make them accessible.
Neat.
It is.
This is the really big room.
Yeah, this is our main vault. Technically, everything you find in this large space is processed, and you can find it either in the catalog or online. Behind you is part of the Abbas Studios collection. So that's 250,000 negatives, although we just had another accrual, which is an added donation of about probably 80 or 90,000 negatives. So
that's crazy.
It's amazing. Johnny Abbas really was everywhere.
Wow.
And his brothers.
250,000.
It
Plus
is incredible.
90,000.
We sometimes have students on the tours who say, "What is a negative?" Because they've never seen photographic negatives.
Well, everything's digital too these days, so.
We did have a challenge initially with this collection because the earliest negatives were nitrate, made out of nitrate, and we actually had one tested here at the chemistry lab at CBU. and it confirmed that it was nitrate film, which is highly flammable.
Oh, wow.
And the odds of it combusting, and I always say on tours, if you've seen Inglourious Bastards, that movie, at the end it's a little dramatic, but it's same material, and you don't want that in an archive. So we have digitized those, and we have to determine what will happen with them. They probably can't remain here, but we'll come up with a plan down the road. But the first step was to get them copied and saved, so that we're comfortable that we have saved the copy of the images.
That's intense.
And there wasn't that much because Kodak safety film came in shortly after, so it's really just the first. Well, we don't say very much, but it's thousands of negatives. But when you're talking 250,000, it's just a small amount.
Yeah, that's like Google search results almost.
That's right. That's right. So this is the Robin, Jones, and Whitman phone. It's a true phone. It's a business company phone. Second oldest company in Canada. They operated in Cape Breton and the Gaspé region, and only declared bankruptcy fairly recently. I think 2006 is when they finally closed down the stores, but I'd have to check the administrative history on that. As you can see, there are ledgers of their operations, and there's letter books. So instead of photocopying letters, every copy was made by hand.
Wow.
And I can show you one of those.
The carpal tunnel must have been awful.
Oh, I know. And they had the most impressive handwriting.
Wow.
But you can see it's on very thin onion skin. And even... So you have to be very careful.
That's like tracing paper these days.
It is like tracing paper. And so it takes a while to get used to reading it, but the handwriting is fantastic. And you can slide a sort of a white sheet of paper underneath, and it makes it easier. But it's a wealth of information.
It smells so nice in here. It's like old books.
It smells great. If you use these books, if you handle them, your hands do smell like fish. They smell of the time period. It's amazing.
That's insane.
So these are our photograph collections. We have photographs that are filed individually according to subject. Then we also have, you can see, numbered photo collections. Now, today, if we receive photographs, we would keep them all together and we wouldn't take them apart. But at the time, sometimes when they came in albums, they were given a photo collection number. Other times, individual photographs were cataloged and given an accession number. So then going around the Cabot Trail, just like we would, going on vacation, people were taking shots, but it was a lot harder to get around. And there's Cape Smoky near Ingonish.
I'm sure lots of people would say it's hard to get around now.
This
but
looks challenging.
This looks like dirt roads.
All dirt roads. So you can see how it's you can start to date. We have the dates on some of our materials, but anyone just the amount of information you can find by the dress, by the cars. It gives you an idea of what time period you're looking at.
Yeah, one of the photos I was dealing with was loose in the box, and I was looking at it and I was like, well, that looks like it's from the 80s.
Right, because the shoulder pads and the colors.
The hair. Yeah.
And I always recommend, we get a lot of photographs without labeling, so we don't know who is in them. And so the best thing you can do if you do print your photographs, and I'm guilty of this, everyone has digital images and they're named IMG 785.
Yeah.
If you can rename them and give them some sort of label, it does help in the future.
Life hack, people. If you want your stuff to go to an archive, you better put labels on it.
We hope. Yeah.